In 2012, a teenage girl started hearing strange noises coming from the ceiling vent above her bed. At first, it sounded like normal house noises, probably just the house settling. But then, she heard someone whisper her name. She ran out of the room and told her mom, but her mom brushed it off. "Old houses make weird sounds," she said. "Don't scare yourself." But the sounds didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, things kept going missing. Snacks, milk, even a full pack of sandwich meat. Lights she was sure she'd turned off were suddenly on, and late at night she could swear someone was breathing above her. Then one night she was lying in bed. She looked up and saw something move behind the vent. She didn't wait. She called the police. When they arrived, they searched the attic. At first, it looked empty, but tucked behind the insulation, they found a sleeping bag, half-eaten food, and a 20-year-old man. He wasn't a stranger. He was her ex-boyfriend, someone her parents had forbidden her from seeing months earlier. He had broken into the house, climbed into the attic, and lived above her room for days. He carved peepholes into the vents to watch her, and scratched messages into the wood. One of them read, "I see you."
This is why we can't be careless about who we let near our children. This is William Flournoy IV. He identifies as a woman and he goes by the name Izzy. He was employed at a young juvenile adult center in Tacoma. William worked around vulnerable children, so keep that in mind. Okay, now here's where it gets heartbreaking. There was a young family who were working multiple jobs. They were living in and out of hotels, and like most families in that situation, they needed help. They trusted William and his partner to watch their children. I think you know where the story's about to go. According to investigators and multiple reports, William is accused of doing the most horrific thing you could do to an infant. Yes, an infant. 6-month-old baby. I don't even have words when I was reading this article. Not only that, but when the police searched William's rooms, they found items that raised even more concerns. They found baby items showing an unhealthy fixation. They also found inappropriate material on his devices involving videos and pictures of minors. Here's the part that really broke me. The child who was 6 months old that had that happen to her, yeah, the parents had to identify it was her in the evidence because there was footage of it happening. It's pure evil. There's no other word for it. There were 2 other children and the police are trying to investigate whether he did anything with them or not. This should remind parents how important it is to be vigilant about who we trust with our children.
She was so obsessed with serial killers that she wanted to be one. 18-year-old Sarah M., aka Damina Cherry, was originally from Switzerland before moving to Germany with her parents. Now, because of Germany's strict privacy laws, we don't know Sarah's full name, and there is a lot of missing information that we don't know. But what we do know about Sarah is that she had a great upbringing. She had parents that loved her, great friends, did really well in school, but once she became a teenager, that's when things started to go downhill. Once she was a teenager, she started to rebel, and she would just do things that would annoy her parents. She would start skipping school, not doing her homework, she would start listening to dark music, and would wear all black clothing. A lot of students at Sarah's school started to not like her because she would constantly lie. At the age of 16, Sarah came up with this lie that she was an S worker. She told her friends, her classmates, and why would someone lie about this? I have no idea. I guess she just really liked the attention, even if it was bad. During this time, Sarah got into her first relationship with this guy, and she was extremely happy even though it was really toxic. The guy ended up breaking up with her, and she was devastated to say the least. This made Sarah so upset that she was already thinking of ways that she could end his life for breaking up with her. It got so bad that Sarah started to become obsessed with serial killers, and one in particular was Richard Ramirez, and she had photos of him in her room. Since Sarah was basically idolizing these serial killers, she wanted to be bigger and better than any of them out there. So she started to do her research, and she made a Google search looking up how she could be the best serial killer out there. In April of 2021, Sarah downloaded a bunch of dating apps, and this is how she was going to start searching for her victims. Now, her victims were going to be men because she was still upset that her boyfriend had dumped her. When she signed up, she used the name Damina Cherry, and in her bio she wrote that she was 18 years old and had never done anything sexual before, but she was down to get rough. As soon as her profile was made, Sarah got roughly 220 messages from men just because of her age and her bio. It's May 1st, and Sarah has chosen her first victim, 39-year-old Zayed, and they had started messaging each other that day and agreed to meet up that night. Sarah wasn't quiet about her plans. She had told her friends exactly what she was going to be doing on these apps. Right before leaving to meet up with Zayed, Sarah left a voicemail for her friend stating that she was going to meet up with this guy, she was going to unalive him, and to wish her luck. Now, this friend never ended up reporting it to her parents or to the police. Maybe she thought Sarah was lying again, but she did end up Googling that if she knew about a crime and didn't report it, would she get in trouble? Sarah was picked up by Zayed around 8 p.m. and she ended up giving him directions to a remote cabin that her family owned, but it was a complete lie. She had him stop the car on this dirt road and she took out a 12-inch weapon and just put it into his neck. Zayed was able to fight off Sarah. He ran out of the car and was able to flag someone down, and the ambulance was called. Now, Sarah had no idea that this was going to happen. She just figured he was going to die and then she could just move on to her next victim, but that was not the case. So Sarah ends up taking off as well. She runs to the nearest town. She's freaking out. She has blood all over herself and she's whispering to herself that she's a killer. People in the town start to notice, so they end up calling police. That same night, Sarah was arrested and taken into custody while Zayed was fighting for his life in the hospital, but he ended up passing away. Zayed's family wanted to make it clear that he wasn't the type of guy to look for hookups. He wanted a serious relationship, even though he was 39 and Sarah was 18. Once Sarah was taken into custody, she had no type of remorse for Zayed. She was only bummed that she couldn't have more victims. To make matters even worse, Sarah reached out to her mom asking if she could end the life of her ex-boyfriend because he was the reason for everything, but of course her mom said no. Because of Sarah's young age, she didn't receive any prison time. She was sent to a psychiatric hospital for 12 years, and then after those 12 years, she will be released into the world again.
So who believes the guy who said he was kidnapped by dolphins, drugged to the bottom of the ocean for 3 days to build homes and condos and buildings? He claimed that they helped him breathe underwater somehow by creating like a bubble of air. He also claims that the leader of this pack of dolphins that kidnapped him goes by the name of Gerald the dolphin. Bro was down there for 3 days while they forced him into hard labor. He then surfaced back out of the water, into which he went to the ER. They did a number of tests on him, on his lungs, on his body, his brain. Come to find out, he had symptoms that he had been underwater, but had not drowned, but had been underwater for a long time. I don't think that our human brains are able to comprehend that this could have really happened.
Florida man claims to have been kidnapped by dolphins and forced to build an underwater city. Let's talk about it. So Lee County Sheriff Department reported early one Monday morning of a man soaking wet on the shoulder of the beach, drawing blueprints in the sand. He was severely dehydrated and very disoriented. And what he told these deputies was he was taken against his will by a pod of dolphins and forced to work underwater with them and build these cities. So basically this big underwater construction project. And the man claimed that the dolphins approached him while he was swimming on the beach one day. And they escorted him to a site that was 40 feet below the surface, where they needed help building structures. And what I find interesting is that he told the deputies that basically the dolphins communicated him through a series of clicks. Now, y'all know it is actually very illegal to communicate with dolphins. It is said that dolphins hold secrets, of ancient secrets, and there is a way that you can, communicate with dolphins. Dolphins are very highly intelligent animals. And he basically said that the leader that was orchestrating this whole project name was Gerald, and that Gerald is what helped him breathe underwater. He said Gerald handled the breathing for him, which I'm assuming with some type of air pocket or air bubble. But like I mentioned before, he had drawn an elaborate blueprint in the sand when he had returned to surface. And the deputies described the blueprints to be a little concerning. It looked like cities, towns, condos. And the man basically said the dolphins were satisfied with his work, his 3-day work of underwater construction. So they sent him back and they'll be like, we'll be back to get you for phase 2, because they're not done there. And the crazy thing is, they sent him to the hospital and he was just dehydrated, but there was no trauma to the head. There was no signs that he was, delirium or anything. There was nothing going on with his mental. He was perfectly fine. But the weirdest thing of all is they did several tests on him, of course. So they found seawater and marine particles in his lungs, which puzzled the doctors because that suggested that he had extended exposure to seawater without typical lung damage. So what they found was basically information that let him know that he was very deep in the water and he didn't have any type of lung damage. And like I said, he said he was down there for 3 days. And another crazy thing about this whole thing is this man has a master's in aerospace engineering. And he has previously worked on deep sea technology projects. So it was like the dolphins knew that this man was a very experienced engineer that has worked in the deep sea. I don't care what y'all say. Some people trying to say it's a hoax, it's all made up. But it's literally facts that there was so much stuff in his lungs that showed that he was underwater for a long period of time with no lung damage. But this whole thing is so interesting. Everybody knows that dolphins are in cahoots with the sirens and the mermaids. I feel like they're trying to build some type of underwater kingdom for them. But this is crazy, y'all. Let me know what y'all think in the comments and if y'all heard about this.
When this young girl was found murdered and the last person to see her was her boyfriend, police thought that this was an open and shut case because it's always the boyfriend. But it would take 40 years to crack this case and discover her true killer. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Karen Stitt. 15-year-old Karen was originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She moved to Palo Alto, California, where she lived with her dad, and she took this move in her stride. She quickly settled into her new high school, where she made lots of lovely friends and adjusted well to her surroundings. She was described by her friends as a wonderful person who was bright, bubbly, beautiful, and kind. On the evening of the 2nd of September 1982, Karen would get the bus to the Sunnyvale area of California where she was going to be meeting her boyfriend because they were going to be having a little date night. Her boyfriend's name isn't publicly available, and so for the sake of this video I'm going to refer to him as Ted. Karen and Ted met up and they went to a 7-Eleven where they played video games for a couple of hours. They were having the best time together. They were enjoying each other's company and they just didn't want the night to end. After spending a couple of hours in the 7-Eleven, they went to a nearby mini golf course where they had a couple of games there. As 12:30 AM was approaching, Ted would walk Karen back to the bus stop in Sunnyvale. He gave her a kiss before waving her goodbye as he ran back home, leaving Karen behind at the bus stop all alone. Karen would never make it onto the bus. The next morning, a delivery driver would park their van up beside a wall, which was around 100 yards away from the bus stop. They decided to peer over the wall for whatever reason, and they would discover Karen's body. She was left in what the police described as the most violent and graphic scene that they had ever worked on. She was naked, and the clothes that she had been wearing, a leather jacket, a stripy t-shirt, and some trousers, were all used to bind her. She was bound by her wrists and ankles and had stabbing wounds all across her body. Her handbag was discovered nearby and all of her belongings were sort of scattered around it, as if someone was looking for something inside and just emptied the bag out on the floor to try and quickly find it. Or maybe she had been robbed. Also found nearby her body was Ted's baseball hat. It was discovered during her post-mortem that Karen had been stabbed over 50 times and she had been sexually assaulted. DNA from the killer's blood and bodily fluid were extracted from Karen's body, but because this was in the early 80s, there wasn't really much that they were able to do with it, so they decided to store it away carefully. Throughout questioning, the detectives would discover that Ted was the final person to see Karen alive. When he was questioned, he told the detectives that yes, Karen was his girlfriend, they had spent all night together on a date night and he had left her behind at the bus stop to get on the bus home. When he was asked why he didn't wait with Karen at the bus stop to make sure that she had safely got on the bus, Ted explained that he had left her there and ran home because he was worried about getting grounded for being late for his curfew. When he was asked why his hat was discovered at the murder scene, which wasn't at the bus stop but 100 yards away, Ted said that Karen had been wearing it. Detectives were looking at Ted sideways because unfortunately in these cases, a lot of the time it is the person that is closest to the victim that is the one that kills them. Detectives would go on to follow up on all of the leads that they could. They thoroughly investigated a suspicious white van that was seen nearby the crime scene, but that resulted in nothing, and throughout the entire investigation, they were met with brick wall after brick wall. They were getting no closer to finding who had murdered Karen. They were still really suspicious of Ted, but they just couldn't prove that he was involved. And so Karen's case began to go cold. By the 2000s, progression in DNA technology was able to rule Ted out as a suspect. It wasn't his blood or his bodily fluids that were found on her body. He was not involved and he had been telling the truth this entire time. He had spent over a decade under suspicion. This breakthrough left the detectives scratching their head because if it wasn't Ted, who had done it? who was responsible? It wouldn't be until 2019 that they got closer to that answer. By 2019, genetic genealogy was coming on leaps and bounds, and so one of the new detectives on the case decided to try this with Karen Stitt's DNA sample. This led him to a family who had a group of brothers, and through his own investigation, he was able to narrow down his suspect pool to just one of them. This is who he thought was his man. Just to be sure, they needed a closer DNA match, and so the detectives actually rifled through some of the suspect's daughter's rubbish and used her DNA to compare to the sample, and after that, all of the pieces began fitting together. They had finally found Karen Stitt's killer, and that was a now 75-year-old Gary Gene Ramirez. He had been 38 at the time of the murder and was living in California. Following this breakthrough, police would arrive to his home in Maui, Hawaii, and arrested him on suspicion of murder. At his trial in 2022, he pleaded no contest and would go on to be convicted. 40 years after her horrific murder, justice had finally been brought for Karen Stitt. Gary Gene Ramirez was sentenced to 25 years to life, meaning that it's more than likely that he will die behind bars.
Let's talk about the fact that Seattle literally had to tear down mountains in order to build the city. People jokingly compare it to literally building the pyramids. The fact that this feat happened in America and it could definitely not happen today. It's like the greatest reshaping of topography we've seen. And yes, this picture of these giant mounds, these 100-foot bloops, are places that they couldn't tear down because people were still living on top of there and they hadn't signed the proper paperwork. Okay, let's go back to the end of the 1800s. We got a bustling port city, but it had a big problem. There was a huge hill in the way that got in the way of expansion plans. Let me introduce you to Denny Hill. It was about 220 feet high. It was a pesky pimple on Seattle's otherwise smooth complexion. It was separating the downtown from the northern neighborhoods. So this guy, Seattle city engineer Thompson, a man with a plan and a shovel, looked at the hill and said, we gotta level it. We gotta start digging. So the first phase of regrading the city and tearing down this hill started in 1908. They used these hydraulic mining techniques that pumped 20 million gallons of water daily from the nearby Lake Union. And these high-pressure jets just blasted the hill. So it was a huge, muddy mess, and approximately 6 million cubic yards of earth were just slushing away. Okay, but don't forget, this is a big hill. There were over 400 homes and businesses on this hill. So people weren't pleased about having to pay to be displaced from their home and then have to rebuild 100 feet lower than before. Some of the pictures you see of these little mounds, that actually wasn't the people that refused to move. It was this one guy who owned property but was in Alaska, so he couldn't sign the papers but he came back and then they could blast the mountains down. Anyway, in total, they ended up removing about 38 city blocks, and today it is a bustling neighborhood called the Denny Triangle.
It's such a difficult, sad thing for me to try and process that the person who played a part into bringing you into this world can also be the person to take you out. Lucy Harrison was only 23 years old. She was full of life and unapologetically passionate about the things that she believed in. She worked in fashion and she was living in a place called Warrington in England. And those who knew her described her as someone who, quote, cared deeply about the world around her. And her mother, Jane, said Lucy had, quote, a huge sense of right and wrong and loved to have debates about things that meant a lot to her, end quote. Lucy was the kind of girl who was very passionate about the things that she believed in, and she was the kind of person who was not scared to ask the difficult questions. And on January 10th of 2025, asking one of those questions cost her her life. Lucy traveled to Prosper, Texas, a suburb just outside of Dallas, with her boyfriend Sam during the holidays in 2024 going into 2025. They were visiting Lucy's father, Chris Harrison, who had moved to the United States when Lucy was only a child. It was supposed to be a happy reunion, a chance for Lucy to spend some time with her father, her stepmother Heather, and her two younger half-sisters. But on the morning of January 10th, 2025, the day that Lucy and Sam were supposed to fly back to England, things went terribly wrong. The tension started earlier that morning. Lucy and her father got into what Sam described to be, quote, quite a big argument about President Donald Trump. At the time, the president was just days away from starting his second term. During that argument, Lucy challenged her father on questions, specifically questions regarding SA. Sam later testified that Lucy asked her father, quote, "How would you feel if I was the girl in that situation and I had been SA'd?" And according to Sam, Chris Harrison's response to that question was, quote, he said something along the lines of, quote, "It would not upset me that much," bringing up the fact that he had 2 other daughters that lived with him in Texas. Lucy was visibly upset and she ran away from the conversation, running up the stairs. About 30 minutes later, before Lucy and Sam were scheduled to leave for the airport, everything changed. Chris Harrison walked into the kitchen where Lucy was standing, took her by the hand, and led her into his bedroom. Sam later described the way that Chris took her hand as, quote, "mysterious." What happened next took only 15 seconds. This is a quote from Sam, quote, "About 15 seconds later, I heard a loud bang, and then I heard Mr. Harrison screaming for his wife, Heather." Sam ran into the bedroom, quote, "I remember running into the room and Lucy was lying on the floor near the entrance to the bathroom and Chris was just screaming, just sort of nonsense. She had been in the chest. She was gone. Lucy Harrison would remain forever 23 years old." When the time came for Chris Harrison, her father, to tell his version of events, he admitted that he had past problems with beverages, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, and he confessed that that day he had been having a lot of those certain beverages. Saying that that made him forgetful, he submitted a written statement to the court, and his version of events was this. He claimed that him and Lucy had been watching a news segment on TV. He told Lucy that he owned a or, quote, "a sense of security for his family," and then he asked her if she wanted to see it. They went into his bedroom where he kept it inside of a bedside cabinet. In Texas, he did not need a license to own the weapon for home defense. Quote, "As I lifted to show her, I suddenly heard a loud bang. I did not understand what had happened. Lucy immediately fell." He told police at the scene, quote, "We got it out to have a look, and just as I picked it up, it just went off." Chris claimed that he could not recall whether or not his finger was on the trigger. He also apparently claimed that Lucy had asked him to see the though everyone who knew Lucy knew that she hated had previously expressed that they were a danger to the family. In other words, Chris's story was that he just didn't know how or why it happened because he just couldn't really remember. On February 12th of 2026, the coroner gave a statement stating that Chris's actions that day, resulting in Lucy losing her life, were intentional. Quote, "To shoot her through the chest while she was standing would have required him to have been pointing the his daughter without checking for and pulling the trigger. I find these actions to be reckless." The coroner did mention that Chris Harrison maybe could not have been aware that the weapon was loaded, but she continued, quote, "He knew full well he had his own daughter pointing a chest height and pulling the trigger. He did not ensure that this information was passed to 911. With a through her heart, her prognosis was poor in any event. His actions have killed his own daughter, and in the cold light of day, it is hoped that he now recognizes the risk he posed to her life in circumstances in which he had no experience of undertaken no training and had never fired a." Family members wept in court as evidence was presented, and what I just told you took place in a courtroom in the UK. However, in the States, things were different because the grand jury declined to indict Chris Harrison, meaning no criminal charges would be filed against him. He walked free. Lucy's family and friends, her boyfriend, her mother, it goes without saying, but they were absolutely heartbroken. Her mom, Jane, has said Lucy had, quote, "so much more of life to live, to love, and to give." Jane also spoke about raising Lucy as a single parent and doing everything she could all the time since she was born to keep her daughter safe. Quote, "I brought Lucy up in a single parent family, and along each step of the way, I did what parents do to keep their children safe, watching her play with her friends when she was little, staying awake until she came home late at night, and feeling grateful every time her return flight landed safely after visiting her dad and family. I never imagined she would be in the US in a place where she should have been safe." Jane went on to say that her and Sam believe that authorities failed Lucy, saying that there is so much to be learned from Lucy's needless and entirely avoidable death. As far as her dad's statement, this is what he had to say, quote, "I fully accept the consequences of my actions, and there isn't a day where I don't feel the weight of that loss, a weight I will carry for the rest of my life, and I know that nothing I say can ease the heartbreak this tragedy has caused. I cannot undo what happened, but I can honor Lucy by being the best father I could to her sisters and by carrying her memory forward in everything we do. I am deeply sorry for the pain others feel from this tragedy. Lucy's spirit, her warmth, her humor, her kindness will live in all of us who loved her." From everything that I read about Lucy, it sounds like she was a person who was so incredibly loved and had so much love left to give. It breaks my heart that her life was cut so incredibly short in a place where she should have been safe. That is all from me today. Let me know your thoughts on this case, and yeah. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you. The woman needs no introduction, especially on this app. Ash Trevino has earned herself the nickname Inmate Hopper, and as of earlier this month, she's been arrested for the second time in just 3 months. Let's talk about it. Now 37-year-old Ash Trevino became known to the world for being problematic, really. She started her TikTok account back in 2019, and she's commonly referred to as an inmate hopper because one of her favorite things to do was date inmates and often introduce them to her children, 2 daughters who the vast majority of the internet grew to have real concerns about, because if one thing is clear about Ash Trevino is that at least in 2024-2025, her children were last on her list of priorities, I would say. Her second favorite thing to do was go on TikTok lives while being on the phone with her incarcerated boyfriends plural, and racking in dollars and dollars and dollars from her followers. She was only 19 years old when she married her high school sweetheart back in 2008. They had 2 daughters together who are now 14 and 17 years old, but that marriage didn't last long. It eventually ended in divorce around 2015, with allegations of infidelity surfacing from Ashley's side. As a newly single mother of 2 children, Ash Trevino created an Instagram account back in 2015. At the time, the content was normal, wholesome even. She would post pictures of her daughters, nails, selfies, pictures of whatever she was doing, little bits and pieces from her everyday life in Texas. But then something shifted, and at some point in the following years, Ashley Trevino began developing romantic connections with men who were in prison for committing horrible crimes. Ash Trevino gets into a relationship with inmate Isaiah Gonzalez. In 2019, she posted on Instagram that she's engaged, starting off the post by saying, quote, "For those of y'all that know, y'all know, LOL, and for those who don't, now y'all do," end quote. Her 2 daughters at that point would have been in 2nd and 5th grade, and their lives were too very much so intertwined with Isaiah's life, because Ashley would take them to visit him in prison. And why is he in prison, you may be wondering? Well, he was serving a 45-year sentence for his role in a 2010 robbery and murder of Mohammed Hashemi, a gas station owner in Texas. Isaiah, along with 2 other men, ambushed Mohammed as he was driving to the bank to make a cash deposit after a store employee tipped them off about which way he was going and how much money he was carrying on him. Isaiah showed up with a weapon and pointed it directly to Mohammed through a car window, and when one of the other 2 men fired their weapon, Isaiah then climbed into the car that Mohammed was in with his body still in the driver's seat, drove to a nearby location, and helped drag his body into the woods and dispose of it. He then took an envelope of cash from Mohammed's vehicle, and then the group spent the next day bragging about what they had done and spending the money that they had stolen. Prosecutors in their findings for his case wrote, quote, "Given the defendant's brutal course of conduct and disregard for human life, the defendant clearly presents a substantial likelihood of danger to the entire community," end quote. Ashley Trevino fell in love with him anyway. She introduced him to her daughters, took them to visit him in prison, encouraging the girls to call him daddy. She talked about him, their relationship and their engagement on social media, explaining to her followers how the relationship came to be. She would say these stories on live. And Ash Trevino is an open book, okay? She'll fill you in. That's part of the reason why she went so viral, is because nothing was off limits when it came to what she talked about and discussed while she was on live streams. The relationship with Isaiah eventually fell apart. He filed for divorce while still in prison, and Ashley, according to the people who followed the situation closely, resisted signing the papers. She did not want to sign the papers because she did not want to pay the filing fees. His sister ultimately had to serve her the papers in person. His sister has also gone on social media to talk about Isaiah and Ashley and about how the reason to the relationship falling apart was a result of Ashley getting with his best friend. She also mentioned her stealing his stimulus checks and opening up a credit card in his name. Isaiah also later asked Ashley to cover up the tattoo that she had gotten with his name. But listening to what him and his sister had to say wasn't really a priority for her at the time, because she had already moved on to a different man. On April 26th of 2022, she married No Trevino. I've heard his name be pronounced as No and Noe, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the man whose last name she took and has kept, even though that relationship has also ended. No Trevino was serving 25 years in prison for murdering a man named Louis Maston outside of a nightclub in 2015. So now there's a pattern: 2 husbands, both convicted murderers, both still incarcerated, and Ash Trevino is in the middle of everything, posting all about it on TikTok. And some people would say that being a prison wife to 2 inmates in that short amount of time at least is already a little bit out there, but 2 doesn't even come close to the number of inmates Ash Trevino has been involved with. She's acknowledged to dating between 26 and 30 incarcerated men over the years. She's also been more than open about the fact that some of them have been recommended to her by other fellow inmates, saying that inmates pass around her contact information inside a prison. Her name, by various accounts, have become well known in Texas correctional facilities. And in the middle of it all, her followers were just growing more and more and more are all watching her very much so messy love life unfold. But in his case, there wasn't only one victim, there were two, a 13-year-old girl and a 19-year-old girl. Ash Trevino did not just date this man, she showed him off. She went on TikTok Live, told her audience with full confidence that he was innocent, that he did not do what he was convicted of, and if you thought otherwise, you were silly and wrong. She used her platform with thousands of people watching to talk to Francisco on speakerphone and read comments out loud to him saying, quote, "Oh my God, they said RIP to those who lost their lives, ha ha ha." She's cracking up. And again, with this relationship, her two daughters are just caught up in the middle of it, not only watching it, but also experiencing it. Her daughters, who were just little girls when this all started, are now growing up in the middle of everything with an audience from the internet to watch it. To no one's surprise, throughout the drama surrounding her relationships, the conversation that dominated Ash Trevino's comment sections, the one that made viewers genuinely uncomfortable and even scared, was about her daughters. Because Ash Trevino frequently featured both of her girls in her content, and put aside the inmate hopper part of her and the fact that she was introducing men who had been convicted of murder to her daughters as father figures, her parenting, apart from that, people felt was a whole issue in itself. In one live stream that went viral, Ashley said to all of her followers that were watching, quote, "My kids have always been with me, and a lot of y'all spread rumors and say that CPS took my kids away from me." Then in the same breath, she added, quote, "CPS never took my kids. Yes, I've had like 20 CPS cases against me. 20 cases, 2-0, and it just rolled off her tongue in a live stream. She could not have said it more casually if she tried. But CPS cases in Texas are confidential by law, so the allegations that were surfacing came directly from things that either she said on live or that people saw through her videos while she was on live. For example, she was accused in one viral clip of putting her hands on her daughter out of jealousy because her daughter was getting more attention from her father than Ashley was from her now ex-husband. She said that she felt like he loved their daughter more than he loved her when they were all living together as a family before they separated, and because of that, she would treat her daughter terribly because she was jealous of her. She would pull her hair and things like that, specifically stating that she would take her anger out on her daughter. Through her live streams, people also saw Ashley once leave her daughters in a house that wasn't theirs by themselves while she went out and had a fun night. People saw that Ashley would get behind the wheel of a car to drive after a night out when she absolutely should not have been driving. They criticized the food that she was feeding her children because she never really fed them real meals. She only fed them snacks. They pointed out how she was so slow to show concern about her daughters if they were sick or needed money for something, but she had absolutely no problem buying all these designer things for herself. Ashley would also make judgy comments to her daughters about their looks while she was on live, like things they should do to improve their looks. For example, she was telling one of her daughters that she really needed to get lip filler. She called them names, called them slurs to her own daughters. The sleeping arrangements were also a point of conversation because the two daughters were sharing an air mattress while Ashley was shopping around for herself like she had no budget. And it goes without saying that she also spoke about her daughter's private matters on live, even after they would ask her not to talk about a specific thing, such as the loss of their biological father. The girls did not want to talk about that in front of the entire internet, rightfully so, but Ashley would consistently bring it up and talk about how they were grieving. But perhaps one of the most jaw-dropping moments came from when she brought her daughters along for her drama with a 19-year-old TikToker named Santos. Ash Trevino, then 36 years old, began a public relationship with Santos in late 2024, early 2025, going on live talking about how he had seen her new and she had seen his area. The age gap alone, 17 years, of course drew immediate criticism, and the fact that she appeared to behave flirtatiously with him in front of her daughters made it only worse. One detail that circulated widely online was the claim that her own daughter had expressed interest in Santos first and that Ash Trevino pursued him anyway. Santos ended up visiting Ash Trevino at her house in person, where her daughters also were, and they made all kinds of uncomfortable, weird, touchy, flirty videos together, alluding to the fact that they were obviously more than friends. Need I remind you, he was 19 years old, she was 36 years old. Ash Trevino's controversies reached a new peak in late 2025 when on December 17th, she was arrested in Venus, Texas on 2 felony warrants, healthcare fraud, and securing a document by deception stemmed from alleged Medicaid fraud dating back to 2019. She was bonded out the next morning for $15,000 and immediately went on Instagram Live, laughing, dancing, and talking about her mugshot. But of course, the drama did not end there. In February of 2026, prosecutors moved to revoke her bond after she posted photos of herself partying at a birthday party, which I guess was a violation of her release conditions. She was rearrested on March 4th, released the same day, and her bond doubled to $25,000 with an ankle monitor and a strict curfew added. As of March 2026, the case remains active, with potential exposure of 4 years in a state jail and $20,000 in fines. And Ash Trevino is still posting. It looks like she's also in a new relationship, and I know there's a lot of drama within that. And as far as her daughters, it seems like they're still within the family, occasionally appearing on her live streams as well, but it seems like the girl's grandmother has played a really big part in taking care of them. If you guys are familiar with this, I feel like you're gonna watch this video and be like, that did not even cover half of her story, because there's just so much drama with every single person that she's involved with, which are a lot. There's a whole storyline like for each relationship that she has. So honestly, we could be here for 3 hours, but that's it for me today. Let me know your thoughts. I'm so curious to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Kansas City, Missouri, 1997. Michelle Johnson, who is 22 at the time and incarcerated, gives birth to her baby girl, who she named Erica Green. Now, the father of Erica Green is also incarcerated, so Michelle didn't know what to do with her baby. So she contacted her baby's father's grandmother and asked her if she could take baby Erica, but the grandmother said, "No, but I got somebody who will." 70-year-old Betty Brown, who was deep in the church and known for helping the neighborhood kids out, and she was also a foster mother here and there, so she had no problem taking in baby Erica. She, in fact, went straight to get her from the prison. Michelle, who has 8 children, by the way, ended up doing about 6 months in jail. Now, Miss Betty ended up coming to get Michelle from jail. When Miss Betty came and got her, she noticed that Michelle was not paying baby Erica no mind. She seemed like she didn't show any interest of wanting to keep her. So Miss Betty kept Erica Green. In April of 2001, Miss Betty and Erica, who is now 3 years old, gets a visit from Michelle, Erica's mother. She wants to take Erica to a family reunion. She wants her to meet her other siblings, her other cousins, and Miss Betty was weary about it at first, but she ended up agreeing and letting her go. The night before Erica was supposed to return back home to Miss Betty, Michelle got home at around 9 p.m. When she got home, she noticed her then boyfriend, Earl, was high off PCP and also drunk. She also noticed that Erica was up past her bedtime. Earl said that Erica was being bad and wouldn't lay down. Michelle told Erica to lay down, and she went to go take a bath. When she got done with her bath and came back into the room, Erica was still up. She asked him, "What is she doing still up?" And he said, "Oh, I told her she could stay up." Yeah, he was high, because didn't you just say? That's when Michelle and Harold got into it. She told him that this is my child and I control her. That's your child over there, pointing at his daughter. That's when Harold stood up and kicked Erica in the back of the head. The 3-year-old collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Michelle took her to the bathroom, trying to revive her by throwing cold water on her. They stayed in the bathroom for about 10 or 15 minutes, and that's when she brought baby Erica back to the bedroom and laid her on the floor. Erica, who is still unconscious, her eyes had even rolled to the back of her head. Michelle and Harold are discussing whether they should even call 911 or not. They both are saying that they have outstanding warrants and they don't want to go back to jail. So they decided not to. They decided not to call for medical assistance. For the next 10 to 14 hours, baby Erica remained unconscious. The next morning, Michelle attempted to feed her, but it's clear that this baby is deceased. So her and Harold waited till the nighttime, and they put baby Erica in a stroller along with hedge clippers and covered her up and left the house. Let me be clear, they left out the window trying to conceal everything. They took baby Erica to a remote wooded area. Michelle took the clothes off her child, trying to further conceal what they have done. Harold took baby Erica's head off with those hedge clippers. Earl actually threw baby Erica's head in a dumpster behind the church, and Michelle said, "Don't you think that they're going to smell that?" So they went back to get her head and then threw it back in a wooded area where they left her body at. The two then went back home and climbed back into the window like nothing ever happened. Now, the next day, Hurl's cousin asked about baby Erica, but the two said that they dropped her off back with Miss Betty. Now, as time is going by, Miss Betty is like, all right, now where's Erica? She's supposed to have been back home. But Michelle is telling her a different story every time that she's with her sister, that she's visiting other siblings, other family members, which wasn't far-fetched because Michelle had 8 children, but she didn't have none of them. She didn't have none of her children. All of her kids lived with different family members. And Miss Betty felt like she couldn't really press the issue because there was no legal paperwork binding her and Erica together. She didn't adopt her or no, she was simply just keeping her. On April 28th, 2001, at around 6:45 p.m., the police are responding to a man who has dementia who had wandered off, or they was trying to see if he had wandered off into the woods, and they wanted the police to go check it out. But instead of finding the man, the police ended up finding the remains of 3-year-old Erica Green. And just a couple days later, on May 1st, a man that was roaming the woods ended up finding the head of baby Erica.
Head in a trash can, in a trash bag, with an ashtray about 200 yards away from where they found the body.
Now, the police are thinking, this should be a simple thing to solve because it's got to be a child missing out here. It's got to be a report of a child missing. But it wasn't. It wasn't. Nobody was claiming Erica. That's when they named her Precious Doe. Now, the people in Kansas City treated Precious Doe so damn precious because they not only gave this baby a proper funeral, them people band together and bought her a headstone and everything. 4 years later, on May 4th, 2005, the police get a tip from Muskogee, Oklahoma, from who? No other than Hurl's 80-year-old grandfather. He said he has actually been sending tips for years, but never heard anything back. But the police said that they was having so many tips from really all over the country. So I guess that they kind of put him on the back burner. But on May 4th, they decided to go out there to visit him. He told the investigators that he always thought that it was his grandson and Michelle because he never got a clear answer of where Erica was and how they acted when Erica's name was brought up. He said he's 80 years old and he's sick, and before he dies, he wants to get this out there. And I forgot to mention that Michelle married him a year after her daughter's murder. So let's let that sink in. But the police went to go question the couple, and guess where they was? In jail. Both of them on outstanding warrants. They questioned Michelle first, and she cracked immediately, and she admitted that it was her daughter. She wrote on the back of the picture that the detectives gave her, "Mama is sorry." Good job, boy. She told them that Hurl was actually the one who killed Erica, and they offered her a plea deal. She even got them a confession. She asked if she could talk to him, and they put the two in a room together, and she told him, it's over. You got to come clean. And he agreed, and he agreed to get her out of the situation. He said, "All this is on me, and I will tell them everything." She testified against him at his trial in 2008.
Put her in the bathtub. She didn't get up. She didn't respond. She didn't wake up. So I took her out the bathroom, and then I laid her on the floor.
And herself accepted the plea deal in 2008 as well. She didn't have to go in front of a jury or nothing. But he was convicted of first-degree murder, getting life without the possibility of parole. And she only got 25 years for her role in killing her own daughter. This is a picture of Miss Betty showing off the clothes she had for baby Erica when she got back because Easter was coming up, and she wanted to take her to church, have her looking fly. This picture made me sad. It made me sad, man. This is Miss Betty at the funeral after, Erica was identified and stuff. I feel so bad for this lady, man. And even though he said he kicked That baby, the autopsy report shows different. I just didn't get all into it because it's rough. It's rough. But 25 years is a slap in the fucking face. If that lady get out, y'all do y'all thing, man.